The night before my wedding, my mother made one phone call. One call. And by morning, my entire life was on fire. She didn't scream at me. She didn't show up at my door. She sat in her living room, dialed a number, and said 7 words that would destroy everything I had built. She called my fiancé's mother, and she told her that I had been institutionalized twice for a mental breakdown. It wasn't true, not a single word of it. But by 6 a.m. on my wedding day, his entire family had pulled out. All 43 of them. Gone. And what my mother didn't know, what she couldn't have predicted, was that my fiancé had been quietly, carefully, methodically collecting every lie she had ever told. Every single one. And he was about to expose all of it in front of everyone. Welcome to Soulful Drama Stories. My name is Camille. I'm 29 years old, and this is the story of the day my mother finally destroyed herself by trying to destroy me. Before we go any further, if this story already has your heart pounding, please hit like and subscribe. It genuinely helps this channel reach people who need to hear stories like this. And drop your city and the time it is where you are in the comments. I read every single one. Now, let me take you back, not to the wedding, not even to the engagement. I need to take you all the way back to when I was 9 years old, because that's when it started. That's when I first learned what I was worth in my mother's eyes. My mother's name is Renata Voss. She's elegant, polished, the kind of woman who always has her hair done, who sends thank you cards within 24 hours, who volunteers at church and gets called a blessing by everyone who meets her. Everyone outside our house. Inside our house, she was something different entirely. I have one sibling, an older brother named Marcus, 24 months older than me. And growing up, the gap between how we were treated wasn't subtle. It wasn't hidden. It was so loud and so constant that I thought it was just the way families worked. When I was 9, I performed in my school's winter showcase. I had a solo, 12 lines. I practiced for 3 weeks. I stood on that stage and I sang my heart out. Afterward, in the parking lot, Marcus got a stop at Dairy Queen for making the honor roll. Mom said, "Camille, you'll celebrate when you actually earn something." I had just sung a solo in front of 200 people. I was 9 years old. I didn't cry until I got home, and when I did, Mom said, "You're so dramatic. Stop performing off the stage." I was 15 when I got the lead in our high school play. Mom came opening night, sat in the 3rd row. Afterward, she didn't mention my performance once. She told the director that Marcus had been offered a place in a competitive summer engineering program, and wasn't that wonderful? I stood in my costume, holding flowers the drama teacher gave me, and listened to my mother brag about my brother for 11 minutes straight. I counted. Marcus went to Duke University on a partial academic scholarship. My parents covered the rest, $44,000 over 4 years. When I graduated high school and got into the communications program at the University of Georgia, I was excited. I called Mom from the car. She said, "Communications? That's not a real career, Camille." I said, "I want to work in media, broadcasting, maybe journalism." She said, "You want to be on television? You're not built for that." She didn't mean my talent. I took out student loans, $61,000 by the time I graduated. Marcus graduated debt-free with an engineering degree and a job lined up before commencement. Mom said at his graduation dinner, "This is what investing in the right child looks like." She said it like I wasn't sitting right there. I didn't say anything. That was the rule I had absorbed without even realizing it. Don't push back. Don't react. Don't give her anything to use against you. I didn't know it then, but that silence was the thing she counted on most. After college, I moved to Atlanta, got a job at a mid-sized marketing firm, Beacon Creative Group. I was good at it, really good. Within 3 years, I was senior content strategist, running campaigns for 3 national clients. I loved my job. I loved my apartment. I loved that I was 4 hours from my mother. I called her every Sunday. She found something wrong every time. "You sound tired. Are you taking care of yourself?" Your voice sounds off. Have you been drinking? I worry about you living alone, a woman your age. I was 26. I met Darius in February of the following year. He was at a conference I was presenting at, a brand storytelling summit in downtown Atlanta. He wasn't there for marketing. He was speaking on a panel about ethics in media. He had a master's in communications and worked as an investigative journalist for a regional news outlet. Our first conversation lasted 4 hours. He asked me questions nobody ever asked me, not "what do you do" questions, real ones. What made you want to go into communications? Do you think the stories we tell change what people believe or just reflect it? What's the last thing that genuinely moved you? I was not used to being asked what moved me. On our third date, I mentioned my mom casually. One sentence. She's a lot. He didn't laugh it off. He looked at me and said, "What does a lot mean for her?" I started talking. I didn't stop for 40 minutes. When I finally did, I said, "Sorry, that was way too much." He said, "No, that was exactly enough. I think you've been holding that for a long time." I had been holding it for 20 years. I didn't know it then, but that conversation was the beginning of everything, including the part where my mother tried to burn it all down. 4 months into dating Darius, he gave me something I didn't expect. Not flowers, not jewelry. A boundary. We were on the phone one Sunday when my mom called on the other line. I clicked over immediately, mid-sentence with him. When I came back 15 minutes later, I apologized and said, "Sorry, my mom." He said, "You don't have to apologize, but can I ask, why did you click over so fast?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You were mid-sentence. You didn't hesitate." I said, "She might need something." He said quietly, "Does she call you a lot?" I said, "Every day." He was quiet for a second. Then he said, "Does she make you feel good when she calls?" I sat with that question for a long time. The answer was no, but I had never admitted that out loud before. In September, Darius asked if I'd ever considered therapy, not in a dismissive way. He said, "I've been in therapy for 6 years. It's the best thing I've ever done. You don't have to, but I wanted to mention it." I started seeing a therapist named Dr. Priya Nakamura in October. Her office was near Piedmont Park. I sat down in that first session, and she asked me one question: "What brings you here today?" I said, "My boyfriend thinks I have some unresolved family stuff." She said, "What do you think?" I said, "I think I'm just sensitive. My mom says I've always been too sensitive." She said, "How often does she say that?" I said, "A lot." She said, "Does she say it after you express a feeling she doesn't like?" I started crying before I could answer. By session 4, I had a word for what was happening: emotional abuse. Not hitting, not screaming, something quieter and more corrosive, the kind that leaves no marks because it works from the inside out. Darius proposed on April 3rd. We were in Savannah for the weekend. He took me to dinner at a restaurant on the river. Afterward, we walked along the waterfront, and at a spot where the lights from the bridge reflected across the water, he got down on one knee. He said, "Camille, you are the most honest person I have ever met. Not because you never lie, but because you're brave enough to keep telling the truth even when it scares you. I want to spend my life next to that kind of courage. Will you marry me?" The ring was a round-cut diamond on a gold band. Simple and perfect. I said yes before I even looked at it. We called his parents first. His mother, Gloria, screamed so loud I heard her through the phone from 3 feet away. His dad got on the line and said, "Welcome to the family, baby girl." I cried. Then I called my mom. She picked up on the second ring. I said, "Mom, Darius proposed." Pause. She said, "Oh, just that. Oh." I said, "We're engaged." She said, "How long have you been dating?" I said, 14 months. She said, "That's not very long, Camille." I said, "We're sure about this." She said, "Are you? Because you tend to rush into things when you're emotionally dysregulated." Emotionally dysregulated. I had never used that term with her. It was clinical language she had no reason to know, unless she'd been talking to someone who used it to describe me. I said, "Who told you that phrase?" She said, "I read." I said, "Mom, I'm engaged. I'm happy. Can you please just be happy for me?" She said, "I am happy for you. I'm just being realistic. You've always been impulsive. Remember when you quit the dance team junior year?" I was 15 when I quit the dance team because the coach was emotionally abusive and made girls weigh in before practice. I said, that's not the same thing. She said, I'm not saying don't marry him. I'm saying make sure you're thinking clearly. The call lasted 9 minutes. She never said congratulations. What she did next, I still can't forgive it. Within 48 hours, she had called 6 relatives: her sister Donna, my cousin Britta, my Aunt Patricia on my father's side, 2 of her church friends who had known me since childhood, and my grandmother Nana Voss, who was 81 and believed everything my mother told her. The message was the same to each of them. Camille's engaged, I'm worried. She seems off lately, not herself. Darius is a lovely man, but I think she's moving too fast. I think something's going on with her emotionally. Within a week, I had received 9 texts asking if I was okay. Not congratulations, not we're so happy for you. Are you okay? Is everything all right? Your mom mentioned you seem stressed. I told Darius. He said, she's recruiting. I said, what? He said, she's telling people a story about you before you can tell your own. So when you say you're happy, they'll doubt you. She's already planted the seed. I said, that's not what she's doing. She's just worried. He said, okay. He didn't argue. He just looked at me with that steady, quiet expression I'd come to recognize. Later, I found out he had started keeping notes that same week. We set the date for October 11th. Budget, $14,000. We'd saved together. Nothing extravagant, a venue we loved, a small guest list, good food, real moments. The venue was Riverside Gardens in Roswell, a converted barn with string lights and a creek out back. Capacity, 160. We invited 112 people. My mother called 2 days after we booked the venue. I know someone who could get you a better deal on a reception hall downtown. I said, we've already booked. She said, you didn't ask me? I said, it's our wedding, Mom. She said, I'm just trying to help. That was always the sentence. I'm just trying to help. Over the next 5 months, she offered to help with the catering, the flowers, the invitations, the rehearsal dinner, the dress. I declined every single time. Each decline earned a comment. I just hope it doesn't look last minute. A barn? Okay, if that's your vision. You're not doing a traditional cake? That's different. I hope Darius's family isn't expecting something more formal. By July, I stopped telling her anything about the wedding. She noticed immediately. She told my Aunt Donna I was shutting her out. She told my cousin Britta that Darius was controlling and didn't want her involved. She told Nana Voss that I had changed since the engagement, and she didn't know what to do. My phone filled with concerned messages from people who had only heard one side. I was keeping it together, barely, and then September came. In September, I got a promotion at work, Director of Content Strategy. Salary jumped to $78,000. My boss, a woman named Tara Ellison, sent a company-wide email announcing it. Mom called the same day. She said, I heard about your promotion. I said, good news travels fast. She said, Tara Ellison, she's your boss? I said, yes. She said, you two get along well? I said, we do. She's great. Mom said, good, because I'd hate for anything to affect that relationship. I said, what does that mean? She said, nothing. I just know how you can be sometimes in stressful periods. That was the first time I felt something cold settle in my stomach. She was circling something. I just didn't know what yet. October 10th, the night before my wedding. We held a small rehearsal dinner, 22 people, a restaurant in Midtown, simple and warm. Darius's parents made a toast. His mother, Gloria, hugged me so hard I lost my breath. His dad called me daughter for the first time. I drove home at 10:30 feeling like the luckiest person alive. At the exact moment I was walking into my apartment, my mother was sitting at her kitchen table with her laptop open and a glass of wine half empty beside her. She was composing a phone call list. Not an email, a phone call. She had decided that an email could be ignored or flagged as spam. Calls were harder to dismiss. Starting at 11:25 p.m., she made 9 calls. The first was to Gloria, Darius's mother. My mother's voice, when she wants to sound caring, is extraordinary. Soft, measured, full of sighs that communicate deep, reluctant pain. She told Gloria she needed to share something difficult. She said she'd been struggling with whether to say anything. She said she loved Camille like a daughter, but she couldn't sleep at night knowing what she knew. Then she said it. She told Gloria that I had been hospitalized twice in my early 20s for mental health crises, that I had a history of erratic, impulsive behavior under emotional stress, that she had watched me deteriorate over the past year and believed the wedding was being driven by instability, not love. She said, "I'm not saying don't welcome her. I'm saying your son deserves to know the full picture before tomorrow." Gloria said she needed to call her husband. Mom called Darius's sister next, then his aunt, then 4 of his cousins who were on the guest list, then 2 of his oldest friends who I had met 3 times and genuinely liked. 9 calls. 2 hours. By 1:30 a.m., Darius's phone was lit up. He didn't wake me. He sat on the edge of the bed in our apartment, we'd moved in together 6 months earlier, and read every text, every missed call notification. Then he did something very specific. He opened the document on his phone that he'd been keeping for 14 months. Every incident, every quote, every pattern. He read through it carefully. Then he made a decision. And what he did next is the reason I'm standing here telling you this story. I woke up at 7 a.m. on my wedding day. Darius was already up. He brought me coffee, sat beside me on the bed. He looked calm in the way people look calm when they're holding something together very deliberately. He said, "I need to tell you something before you look at your phone." I looked at his face and felt my stomach drop. He told me everything. The calls, his mother, his family, the things my mother had said. I didn't speak for a full minute. Then I said, "She told them I was institutionalized?" He said, "Yes." I said, "That never happened." He said, "I know." I said, "How many people did she call?" He said, 9. By this morning, 43 of my family members have pulled out. 43 people in one night. I picked up my phone. I had 22 texts. Darius's cousins, his college friends, his aunt apologizing but saying they felt they couldn't come given what they'd learned. One text from his sister that said, "I'm so sorry. I don't know what to believe." I sat with that for a long time. His sister didn't know what to believe. She'd known me for over a year, hugged me at family dinners. We'd gone to brunch together 4 times, and my mother had dismantled that in one phone call. I started to shake. Darius put his hand over mine and said, "Look at me." I looked at him. He said, "We are getting married today. I don't care if it's the 2 of us and a preacher in an empty room. We are getting married." I said, "Darius, your whole family." He said, "Some of them will come around, some won't, but they don't get to decide this." I said, "Everyone's going to think I'm unstable." He said, "Camille, I need you to hear me. I have spent 14 months documenting every single thing your mother has said and done. I have dates, I have quotes, I have pattern categories, gaslighting, financial favoritism used as control, systematic reputation sabotage, and last night, targeted defamation." He looked directly at the front row. "I have sent this documentation along with those medical records to every person my future mother-in-law called last night, every single one of them. They received it 20 minutes ago." Someone in the room made a sound. He said, "I did this because Camille spent 20 years being told she was too sensitive, too impulsive, too emotional, too much. She spent 20 years shrinking herself to survive an Everson family environment that was designed to make her doubt her own reality." His voice didn't waver. "She is the most grounded, clear-headed, emotionally intelligent person I have ever met. She recognizes abuse in other people's stories because she lived it in her own home. and I am not going to stand here and let the person who abused her be the one who defines her on our wedding day. He put his phone down. Now, I'd like to marry my fiancé. And that's when the doors opened. The back doors of the barn swung wide. I was standing at the entrance in my dress, bouquet in hand, Kezia next to me. I saw Darius at the altar. I saw the 21 people turning around. And I saw flooding through those doors a wave of people I recognized. Women from the mentorship program I ran through my firm. Beacon Creative had partnered with a nonprofit called Launch Her, a career accelerator for women leaving difficult situations, career gaps, starting over. I'd been a volunteer mentor for 3 years. I had worked with 54 women in that time. They were all there, not in matching jackets, in their best clothes, church dresses, blazers, heels, bright colors, 47 of them. They had driven from 3 different cities. They had rented 2 vans and someone's SUV and carpooled from Athens and Macon. Their coordinator, a woman named Simone, had organized it. She told me later, at 9 a.m. that morning, she received a forwarded text from one of the Launch Her women who had a cousin on Darius's side of the family. The cousin had told her what happened, what my mother had done. She texted the group chat, "Camille is getting married today. Her mother told her fiancé's family she was institutionalized. It's a lie. The wedding is at 2 p.m. Who's coming?" 47 women said yes within 40 minutes. And behind them, Darius's family. Not all 43, but 26 of them. His parents first. Gloria walking in with tears streaming down her face. His sister, 2 of his cousins who had texted me that morning to apologize. They had read his documentation. They had seen the records. And they came. The barn that had felt hollow and echoing at 2 p.m. was full by 2:18. I stood at the back, unable to move. Kezia whispered, "Camille, they're here." I walked down that aisle through 80-something people who had chosen to show up. When I reached Darius, he was crying. I didn't expect that. He'd been so composed. But when I got to him, his eyes were full. He said quietly, so only I could hear, "I told you." I said, "What did you tell me?" He said, "I told you people would show up." Before the vows, Simone stepped forward. She stood in front of the room and said her name and how she knew me. She said, "I run a career mentorship program for women rebuilding their lives. 3 years ago, Camille Wass walked into a room of 15 women who had been told in one way or another that they were too damaged, too broken, too far gone to deserve a real future. She looked at every single one of them and said, 'I don't see that. I see someone who's still standing.'" Her voice was steady and strong. This morning, someone tried to tell the people who love Camille that she was damaged, broken, too far gone, mentally unstable. And I want to stand here in front of all of you and say what Camille once said to us. She paused. "I don't see that. I see someone who's still standing." The room erupted, not polite applause, real, full sound from 80 people who meant it. Then Gloria stood, Darius's mother, the woman my own mother had called at 11:15 the night before. She said, "I owe this young woman an apology. Last night I received a phone call that shook me. I reacted in fear. I called my family. I made calls I should not have made. I believed something I should have questioned." She looked at me directly. "Camille, I read what Darius sent me this morning, every page, and what I felt reading it wasn't surprise. It was recognition. Because I have watched you for over a year love my son without condition, without game playing, without manipulation. You are exactly who you've shown us you are. And I am so sorry that I let fear make me doubt that even for one night." She sat down. I could not speak. Darius squeezed both my hands. The officiant, our friend Marcus Webb, who had gotten ordained online 3 months prior, cleared his throat gently. He said, "I've never done a ceremony quite like this one, But then again, I've never known a couple quite like this one. Let's do the vows. Darius went first. He said, Camille, I want to tell you something I've never said out loud. The first night I saw you, you were presenting at a conference in front of 200 people. You were confident and specific and completely yourself. And I thought, she knows exactly who she is. He paused. Then I got to know you, and I realized you didn't know that at all. You'd been told for so long that who you were was wrong, too sensitive, too much, too impulsive, that you'd started to believe it. And watching you spend this past year unlearning that, that has been one of the greatest privileges of my life. His voice cracked. I didn't document what I documented to be your protector. I did it because I knew one day you might need proof that your reality was real, that what you lived was real, that you weren't imagining any of it. And I wanted you to have that proof when you were ready for it. I love you not because you need saving. I love you because you are extraordinary. And I want to spend every day making sure you never forget it. I was crying. Kezia was crying. Two people in the back row I had never met were crying. I took a breath. I said, Darius, when I met you, I had been performing okayness for 20 years. I was so good at it. I had an apartment, a job, a life that looked completely fine from the outside. And somewhere underneath all of it, I was a 9-year-old girl in a parking lot being told she hadn't earned anything yet. Silence. You asked me questions nobody had asked me before, and you listened to the answers, all of them, even the messy ones, especially the messy ones. You gave me a language for things I'd experienced but never been able to name. And once I could name them, I could see them. And once I could see them, I could choose differently. I looked at the room, the 80 people, the string lights, the creek outside. My mother made 9 phone calls last night to take this day for me. She spent 20 years making me smaller. And I want her to know something because I know somebody will tell her. I took a steady breath. She didn't win. She never wins, because you cannot take a future from someone who has finally decided she deserves one. I am not too sensitive. I am not impulsive. I am not damaged or unstable. I am a woman who spent 20 years surviving, and I have chosen today to stop just surviving and start living. I turned back to Darius. I choose you, I choose us, and I choose myself, finally, for the first time. Thank you for teaching me that was allowed. 4 minutes. The room stood for 4 straight minutes. While we were saying our vows, my mother was parked in the lot across from Riverside Gardens. She had driven there alone. She told my father, Gerald, she was going to church. He found out later she had driven 40 minutes to watch. She sat in her car with the engine off. She had received Darius's documentation at 1:47 p.m., the same time everyone else did. She read it. 142 incidents, dates, quotes, categories, all 14 months, organized the way a journalist organizes evidence, because that is exactly what he was. At the bottom, a single paragraph. This document has been shared with Camille's therapist, a licensed attorney, and all individuals you contacted last night. If you make any further false statements about Camille's mental health to her employer, her colleagues, her community, or any member of either family, this documentation will be filed with the appropriate legal authorities as the foundation of a defamation claim. You have already caused significant harm. This is your only notice. Her hands were shaking. She watched people walk into the barn. She watched 47 women in bright clothes go through those doors. She watched Gloria and Dennis Fairweather, Darius's parents, walk in 20 minutes after they'd told her family not to come. She watched the barn fill up. She had wanted me to walk into an empty room and finally believe what she'd spent 20 years telling me. Instead, she watched 80 people choose me. She stayed in that parking lot for 2 hours. She drove home alone. The reception was loud and long and full of food nobody had planned. Launch Her women kept appearing with covered dishes. Simone had sent a group text at noon, "Bring something to eat if you can." People brought what they had: Jamaican rice, lemon pound cake, a pasta salad in a bowl the size of a small child, honey garlic wings, 3 different kinds of cornbread. We had planned for 112 people. We fed 80, and there was still food left over. Someone pushed tables together. Someone else connected their phone to the venue's speaker system. Our first dance was a song Darius had put on a playlist months ago, one he'd never told me about. When it started playing, I looked at him and said, "You planned this?" He said, "I planned a lot of things." I laughed so hard I cried. 4 Launch Her women asked to dance with me when there was no father-daughter dance. They formed a line. I danced with all of them. Gloria held my face in her hands at one point during the reception and said, "I am so sorry about last night. I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you." I said, "You showed up. That's already most of it." She cried again. We danced until 9 p.m. 3 days later, I learned what happened after my mother got home that night. My father, Gerald, had been waiting up. He'd found the documentation. Darius had included him in the send list. He'd read every page. When my mother walked in, he was sitting at the kitchen table. He said, 142, Renata. She said, "It's exaggerated." He said, "He has dates. He has quotes. He documented the Dairy Queen. He documented Marcus's tuition. He documented every Sunday call for 14 months. She said, "I was protecting her." He said, "You called her fiancé's mother at 11:15 at night and told her our daughter was institutionalized. That is not protection. That is a lie designed to destroy her wedding." Mom said, "You're choosing her over me." He said, "I'm choosing the truth." He slept in the guest room that night and the night after. My brother Marcus called me 2 weeks later. He said, "I didn't know how bad it was. For you, I mean. I knew she was hard, but I didn't know." I said, "You were the golden child. It looked different from where you were standing." He was quiet. Then he said, "I know I didn't see it." I said, "I know." He said, "Can we talk? Like, actually talk?" I said, "Yes." If you've made it this far, I want you to stop for a second, not to like or subscribe, just to ask yourself something. Has someone in your life ever used your emotions against you, called you dramatic for having a reaction, told other people you were going through something to discredit you before you could speak for yourself? If yes, I need you to hear this. You are not too sensitive. You are not dramatic. You are not the problem. You are the one who's been living inside the problem, and you are allowed to name it. You are allowed to leave it, and you are allowed to build something better on the other side. Now, let me tell you how the story ends. The restraining order was filed 6 days after the wedding. My mother was served at her book club. 4 women watched. She told them afterward it was a misunderstanding. It was not a misunderstanding. The restraining order is active for 18 months. My father, Gerald, moved into an apartment in November. He and my mother are legally separated. He reaches out to me once a month, short texts asking how I am. I respond briefly. We are not close, but the door is not closed. My brother Marcus started therapy in December, his own therapist. He texted me after his 3rd session and said, "I didn't realize how much of what I thought was normal actually wasn't." I said, "That's the first step." We talk every week now, real conversations, not performances. The Launch Her program got a feature story written about it by Darius, because he is exactly the kind of person who would do that, in a regional magazine. Applications tripled. Simone hired 2 additional staff coordinators. I was asked to join their board. I said yes immediately. Darius and I spent our honeymoon in Portugal, 8 days. We ate well and slept late and talked for hours every evening and did not check our phones. It was the first vacation of my adult life where I did not dread going home. In January, I got a call from my old boss, Tara, asking if I'd be interested in leading a new division. More responsibility, more impact, significant raise. I said yes. In February, we found out I'm pregnant. 11 weeks now. My mother sent a card when she found out. Her attorney forwarded it. She can't contact me directly. The card said, "Camille, I know I've made mistakes. I hope one day you'll let me explain." I read it once, then I put it in a folder I keep in the bottom drawer of my desk. The folder is labeled Evidence of Who She Is. I haven't responded. I don't know if I will. What I know is this. I am 29 years old. I am married to a man who spent 14 months quietly collecting proof that my reality was real. I run a content division and sit on a nonprofit board and am growing a human being who will never, not once, be told they haven't earned the right to be celebrated. My mother spent 20 years teaching me I was too much, and she spent one night trying to prove it to the world. Instead, she proved something else entirely. She proved that the people you invest in will show up for you. She proved that truth, documented carefully and shared at the right moment, is more powerful than any lie. And she proved that you cannot make someone feel alone when they have spent years making sure other people know they are not. I used to think love was supposed to feel like my mother's love, conditional, managed, offered and withdrawn based on whether I was being who she needed me to be. Darius taught me that real love doesn't require you to be smaller. Real love says, here is who you are, all of it, and I'm staying. If you've been told you're too much, you're not too much. You're with the wrong people. Find your people. Build your table. Invest in other people's survival because I promise you, they will show up in matching church dresses in rented vans from 3 cities when you need them most. And if you're currently walking down an aisle that feels too empty, keep walking because the people who are supposed to show up are on their way. Thank you for being here for this story. If it moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, not for the algorithm, for them. And if you want to hear more stories like this, real, human, complicated, and ultimately hopeful, subscribe to Soulful Drama Stories. We'll see you in the next one.